Hi, this is Joel Farkas. Welcome back to Revolutionary War Lectures. This lecture is part 3 of 5 parts, Remembering the American Revolution. Mark Twain once said, "Never let the truth get in the way of a good story." So let's continue to see how you remember the founding of our country. So we left off with the battles of Lexington and Concord, considered the beginning of the Revolutionary War. So after these 2 battles, the British make their way back to Boston. They're being harassed by the Sons of Liberty, the militia, all the way back. Word goes out all over New England what has happened, that your friends and your neighbors and your fellow citizens have been murdered by the British, and up to 15,000 patriots converge and surround Boston. And this is known as the Siege of Boston. So let's take a look at the map. You can see Boston is a peninsula, therefore it is at sea level. So it is at low ground, and the British Army and the Loyalists basically are now in Boston. And the British military look around and they realize being at sea level, they're at a disadvantage because there is higher ground around them. And they look around and decide that they're going to secure some high ground and from there maybe jump off to try to break the siege. And this becomes known as the Battle of Bunker Hill. So, does anybody remember Groucho Marx? He used to have this television show, You Bet Your Life. So Groucho always wanted to make sure that a contestant won something. And so if after the questioning, a contestant did not win anything, the stuck comes down with the question, and the question was fairly obvious. For instance, who was buried in Grant's tomb? So here is my question to you to see how you remember the Battle of Bunker Hill. Ready? Where was the Battle of Bunker Hill fought? On what hill did we fight the Battle of Bunker Hill? And if you said Bunker Hill, you were wrong. We fought the Battle of Bunker Hill on Breed's Hill. If you look at the map, you can see Breed's Hill right below Bunker Hill. To this day, nobody really knows why we fought at Breed's Hill when the orders were to fight, to fortify, and to wait for the British at Bunker Hill. Now let's talk a little bit about the battle itself. It actually starts with this man, Dr. Joseph Warren. You may remember him from the last lecture. He is the head of the Sons of Liberty in Boston. Again, a spy has alerted him that the British are going to try to secure Bunker Hill and use that as a jumping off point to try to break the siege. So he alerts the Sons of Liberty and the other patriots. They go down the night before, and then we have one of the bloodiest battles of the war. It was so bloody, if you will, the Redcoats lost almost half their men. The loss we have sustained is greater than we can bear. That's from the British General Thomas Gage. Meanwhile, Nathaniel Greene says, "I wish we could sell them another hill at the same price." So Dr. Warren, and at this point, he's now Major General Warren, is sitting in his office and he says, "I have to be at the battle. I have to fight with my men." So he goes to the battle and he fights in the battle and he is killed. And this is a very famous painting, The Death of General Warren, by John Trumbull. Now, the British recognize Warren, and they do quite a job destroying his body, and then he's thrown into a mass grave. Well, a few months later, Warren's family wants to find his body to give it a proper burial. They go through the mass graves, if you can imagine this, and they do find a body that they think might be his. So how can they be sure whether it is him or not? Well, Warren had some work done in his mouth, and he had some false teeth in his mouth. So they go to the dentist who did the work. The dentist goes to the mass graves, identifies the body, and says, yes, that is my work. Who was the dentist who identified the body? Paul Revere, America's first forensic dentist. At any rate, Joseph Warren is given the burial that his family wants for him. So let's go back to the siege. All right, if you look at the bottom of this, you see the siege lasts almost a year. Imagine being under siege for a year. Well, around November, this man, Colonel Henry Knox, Colonel of Artillery, goes to Washington and says, General, I have an idea. We had captured Fort Ticonderoga. In that fort are still the cannons and the other munitions. And if we can get them here, and I think I can do it, we can put these up on high ground and have the British within cannon range. So Washington authorizes it. And this becomes known as the Noble Train of Artillery. So take a look at this picture. It kind of gives you an idea. And this is another one. So Knox and his men drag, push, pull. They use oxen, they use horses. When they have to cross the Hudson River, they build rafts. They transport 120,000 pounds of cannons and other munitions 300 miles, and it took them about 2 months. And this is the route that they took. Notice they crosses over the Berkshire Mountains. Can you imagine this? And Knox and his men get it done. And then eventually the cannon are put on top of what's called Dorchester Heights. A note goes to the British, basically says, look out your window, our cannons are trained on you. If you don't leave, we will destroy your fleet and your army. The British respond, if you don't let us leave peacefully, we will burn Boston to the ground. So it is decided to let them leave, and that is how the siege of Boston ends. Now I want to talk about what I call the wordsmith, and we're talking about this man, Thomas Paine. So in early 1776, Thomas Paine publishes his pamphlet, which is called Common Sense. Though at that point in time, about a third of the population was for separation, about a third was against, and about a third wasn't sure either way. Well, this was such an influential pamphlet that after, and Thomas Paine explains why it is time to separate from the crown, why monarchy is a bad form of government, why we need to do this now. And it was written in such a way that it persuaded a lot of people who were on the fence or who wanted to stay loyal to the crown to be for separation. At one point, Thomas Paine was probably the third most popular man in America, behind George Washington and Ben Franklin. As John Adams said, without the pen of the author of Common Sense, the sword of Washington would have been raised in vain. I'm going to read you just a few lines of a few quotes from Common Sense. We have it in our power to begin the world over again. The cause of America is in a great measure the cause of all mankind. It is not in numbers, but in unity that our great strength lies. There is something absurd in supposing a continent to be perpetually governed by an island. So, let's talk some more about Thomas Paine. So the war ends. Thomas Paine is a hero, loved by all. He's given a little house in New Rochelle, New York. But he goes to France, where he chronicles the French Revolution. At first, he's a hero, but then he winds up in French prison. And while there, he writes more pamphlets, one of which was he questions George Washington as being a great hero. Well, does not make him popular in America. He writes a pamphlet against monarchy. Of course, he's in France, which is ruled by a monarchy. That doesn't make him very popular. And then he writes a pamphlet against organized religion. Whoa, that was not good. So he's in prison. Nobody wants to know him back here in America because of these pamphlets that he's written. But finally, through the help of some friends, he is freed and he goes back to America. Well, he's an outcast. Nobody wants to know him. Becomes a drunk, and eventually he dies. At his funeral, 6 people attended. From being the 3rd most popular man in America, 6 people attend his funeral. Now, a year or two later, a newspaper publisher who admired Thomas Paine in England decides that there needs to be a memorial for Thomas Paine. So he has Thomas Paine's body dug up and shipped to England. And his hope is that people will give money so that a memorial to Thomas Paine can be built. Well, nobody gives him anything. Eventually, the publisher dies, and then his son inherits everything, including the body, and his son doesn't know what to do with it. Nobody really cares about it. And then Thomas Paine's body disappears. So this is an article from the New York Times in 2001, and basically it says, so whatever happened to Thomas Paine's body? Well, the New York Times started to get replies, one of which was, I live in Australia. I bought Thomas Paine's head at an auction in England. If you'll send me $60,000, I'll do a DNA test. Well, to my knowledge, the New York Times did not send this person $60,000. So that concludes part 3 of 5 parts. You see my contact information on the screen. If you have any questions, any comments, I would love to hear from you. So until next time, thanks for watching.